Welcome to Hollers and Hills, the podcast that takes you deep into the heart of East Tennessee's Great Smoky Mountains. The tourism hub welcomes millions of visitors a year, but it's also home to generations rooted in its Hollers and Hills. Join us as we uncover centuries-old rural communities, share rich history, and explore landmarks and attractions old and new. Meet the passionate craftsmen, entrepreneurs, and community leaders dedicated to preserving this beautiful region for future generations. Get ready to pack your bags and create your own mountain memories. Hollers and Hills is sponsored by Compass Ventures, a leading developer in Sevier County, helping to navigate your next trip to the Smokies. From Ole Smoky Moonshine to Ober Mountain, Joe Baker is sharing a taste of his Smoky Mountain home with the world. The Gatlinburg native and his wife, Jessie, are the founders of Ole Smoky Distillery, Yeehaw Brewing, and are giving new life and look to the Ober Gatlinburg ski resort. In this episode, we talk with Joe about his roots, Moonshine, the Music City, family business, and continuing the tourism legacy. Hello and welcome to Hollers and Hills. I'm your host, Beth Haynes, alongside Sevier County developer and community leader, Austin Williams, and we are thrilled to have Joe Baker with us today. We talked about you being from Gatlinburg originally. You are an attorney, turned businessman, entrepreneur, and I like to call you a moonshiner. Is that okay?
I've been called more, so I'll take moonshine.
Well, welcome back to downtown Sevierville. We were talking in your role as an attorney. You had a law office here.
I did, yeah, and still do. I was actually just over there just a few minutes ago. It's I don't know. I have a lot of memories practicing law. It seems like it's been a long time ago, but it's really only been about 15 years ago that I was practicing every day here in Sevier County. So it's fun to walk back in and see all the changes going on. And this guy's responsible for most of it, but it's a great place to be.
Growing up in the Smoky Mountains, what was that like for you?
I have so many fond memories, but I'm asked that a lot. You know, when out and about, somebody finds out you're from Pigeon Forge or Gatlinburg, and they want to know what was it like growing up there. And probably the best part as a kid was a new set of friends every week. You know, there were people always coming through, and I remember being 8, 9, or 10 years old and running up and down the sidewalks in Pigeon Forge, and you'd have campers and people that were staying in the hotels and all the swimming pools, and we just kind of trespassed and did some swimming here and there, and got to make a lot of friends. And I think that as a kid, it makes for fun summers for sure, with all the arcades and go-kart tracks, everything that exists here. It was a lot of fun that your kids in a lot of other communities probably didn't have that same experience.
And your wife's family, they've been in the tourism industry in Gatlinburg for many years. Right. Miss Peggy,
yes.
The late great.
Yes.
I had a chance to interview her with Old Smoky Candy Kitchen.
I love that.
And they came to this area in the 1950s. Were they just making a pit stop? Were they touring?
Yeah, I think that as she told me several times, they were looking for a better life coming out of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and they just kind of wandered down here and ended up. Actually, I think their first work was at the Home for Children here in Sevierville, and she would bake pies and just do anything she could to make a dollar, trying to make ends meet. And they ended up starting the candy kitchen in Gatlinburg, and it obviously has grown into an important part of the Gatlinburg community. But very successful in their journeys through entrepreneurship and tourism. And I think that's something that when you ask about what's unique about growing up here too, I think that for me was something that was really not only evident as a kid, but an important part of who we are and what we do as a family now. The idea of living in a place where it was sort of feast or famine between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Especially when I was younger, it was really only 3 months. You all the families that worked here in town were, if you weren't professional, a doctor, a lawyer, or something of that nature, it was more just tourism. And so I always joke that as a kid, you didn't want to lose teeth after Labor Day because the tooth fairy was less likely to leave you $1 or $2. So it's I think that piece, around the industry of tourism and hospitality, service, all that stuff, it certainly had a big impact on us.
It was your family's business.
Well, my dad did everything. I mean, he tried everything from building houses to running go-kart tracks, and was leased. I think he leased a restaurant or two. I mean, they were. He had a history of doing just about anything he could to try to make ends meet.
Yeah.
Flea markets, running around for flea markets, selling stuff.
You actually left home to go to school.
Right.
Tell me about that decision. And was it always the plan to return to Tennessee?
It was never the plan to leave Tennessee for me. I was, Jessie was a couple of years behind me, and she ended up going to school in Washington, D.C.
And you guys were high school sweethearts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I met her when she was 14, and I was a junior. She was a freshman, and we became good friends and remained. We're lucky to have known each other for so long. But she was interested in Georgetown, and I was interested too. I had an opportunity to do an internship with Jimmy Quillen, who was our congressman at the time, and I applied at the same time, and we ended up at DC, and that was an incredible experience for us. But I can be in Nashville and get off the 407 exit and start driving in on 66, and as soon as I see the mountains, it doesn't take much to miss home.
Well, I want to talk about getting into the moonshine business with Ole Smoky Distillery.
Growing up here, it is there is certainly a colorful past in the history and heritage of moonshine. Moonshine was just a part of who we are and who we were. So as a kid, I was never really a big drinker. I never really had any ideas of going into the beverage business, period. But I remember when I was about 14, my dad, one day I wasn't in school, and he had me go with him up. There was a house up there, and he and a friend had a very large still up on his hill. And so I went in, and they were cooking a mash, and my job was to hold a recirculate pump, a hose, and this mash was cooking. And I was told that they were making alcohol to sell to McCormick Foods to be used as an additive to vanilla extract. So as I got older, I think that especially when we were in school in DC, a lot of times people would ask, "Oh, you're from East Tennessee? Can you get moonshine?" And so the idea of moonshine, the pride, and just I think mountain culture is something that kind of stuck and developed. And I think again, when you're away from home and you long to be back home in some ways, and be proud of where you come from. So that was all sort of there. And then after practicing law for about a decade, I was here looking at the newspaper one day, and I saw a bill that was going through the legislature and that would allow us to get a license to distill spirits. And it just seemed obvious that an incredible souvenir. I knew that Jesse's family had done well with that taffy machine in Gatlinburg, and I thought, well, if we could just sell moonshine, maybe that would be a good souvenir. And so that was really how that came about. What happened here in Tennessee was a change in the law that allowed folks to get a license outside of the 3 counties where licenses had existed post-prohibition.
We've sort of heard this theme every episode, is the entrepreneurial spirit, because you mentioned that there was a time that it was a 3-month span, and you had to figure out a way to make ends meet. It's neat how that's came down through the generations, and then for you, how you've noticed that little opportunity and obviously capitalize on it well.
Yeah. No, I think just it's again kind of going back to the mountains. I mean, people have been just trying to find ways to get by for a long time here, and so that's it certainly is. It was. I have often been credited with some brilliant idea and concept, and to me it was just I'm lucky to be from somewhere and have some history that just happened to be a good product, and so a lot of hard work went into it, but it's really, it's just who we are. Ole Smoky is a good representation of who we are. Ole Smoky, if you're going to have a brand of moonshine, it ought to be called Ole Smoky.
Well, I'm just picturing you and Jesse around the stove experimenting with flavors. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So,
and how much did you know about moonshine other than that brief experience at 14?
Yeah, I was not. I'm not a distiller. I could stumble through it for sure, but as far as making flavors, what Jesse and I did is we created the apple pie flavor at home, and that was fun. Jessie is a great cook, so she is. I probably ought to credit her more with that than me. I was just standing around there, stirring and tasting. But we did some of our flavors, specifically apple pie, was created in the kitchen, and also our salty caramel whiskey we did that one. We did that one night at my in-law's house. That was a fun product to create. It was not I started that one and I was mixing, and we were just basically trying to make caramel and add some bourbon to it and see what it would taste like. It didn't look very good because the butter congealed, and you didn't want to. You wouldn't want to put that in a bottle, but that's how it was. That flavor, it's very popular, and that's how it was born.
Do you have a favorite?
I think clear, probably the Blue Flame is my favorite.
You talk about moonshine wherever you are in the country and probably internationally now.
Yeah.
People know the name Popcorn Sutton, renowned moonshiner, bootlegger. And I actually had a chance to interview Pam multiple times.
Yeah.
Very
That's
nice
great.
lady. How did the two of you get together?
I was formally introduced to her maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I had met her prior to that. She had before Popcorn's death, he had made a deal with somebody to help try to use his likeness and sell products, and so they did that, and it was I wasn't present for it, so I don't know exactly how it played out, but long story short, that business faltered, and I later had an opportunity to work with Pam, and she was frustrated because of her husband's legacy. That here's this guy who really is a legendary person. He is a legendary moonshiner, and there's so many different brands out there making money and capitalizing on moonshine, and I think it probably hurt her to see that this legacy was just kind of being lost, and. I remember sitting in a law office over in Newport when I first formally met her and talking about what I hope to do, and we've become big buddies, and she is now a friend, and so we're excited to help her really get that off the ground. And
so talk about that line in the product.
Yeah. So 2 things. He always called his spirit liquor, and spelled Likker. And so we have we've honored that. That's what it's called, liquor, and it's the unaged product that he made. His moonshine or liquor is again what he called it. But there's also an aged product that is a very good bourbon. And I had never received one of these, but there are people who have told me around Christmas that Popcorn would give away a jar of or a bottle of Christmas whiskey, and this Christmas whiskey was his whiskey that he had made and aged, and was described as being the best whiskey anybody had ever had. And I have tasted some, and I got to taste some as we were. Pam gave me some and allowed me to take it and recreate the brand around that. So the bourbon that's sold in the Popcorn Sutton under the Popcorn Sutton brand is his Christmas whiskey. It is the best that could be done to replicate that.
Ole Smoky recipe, is that your family's recipe?
Yeah, Ole Smoky. It's funny. The corn whiskey is a recipe that we came up with after trying 7 or 8 different known recipes from Sevier County, from the area, at my law office over on the courthouse square. I had my Uncle Johnny brought in I remember, because I was still practicing law at the time, and I I had just bought a conference table that I thought was beautiful, more than I'd ever paid for anything, right? And I've got this conference table. We're sitting in there. I'd come in, had a long day at court. He came in, and we had 7 or 8 jars of different moonshines. And we were sitting around the table, 5 or 6 of us tasting it. And we kind of settled on which iteration we wanted to try to model and pursue. But after we did all this, the varnish off of the table had been washed off. So it destroyed my table, but we got a good recipe out of it. So it's fun.
Well, and it's not just selling the moonshine, it's an experience. I was reading the amount of visitors, 4.5 million visitors a year throughout all of the distilling locations.
I think it's close to 6 now.
Is it now?
It is. It's unbelievable. And that's that when I talk about being lucky to be from here. We are the most visited distillery in the world by virtue of being on the edge of the national park and having. There's so many people that are coming here anyway, but good location and good story and good brand, all that mixes into a good visitor experience.
When you're not only the product available across all 50 states, but internationally.
Yeah, 54 countries. I think it's we're blessed and lucky, and I think that the best part of it though for me is as a community we've created about 1,000 jobs through Ole Smoky, and these are people that are. I'm so proud to hear about homes and things are. It's that hearing things like that at a Christmas party when somebody comes up and tells you they bought their first home, and they're grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful that they're putting in so much hard work and building a business, but it's like making an impact like that at home. That's the good stuff.
I do want to talk about Yeehaw because that's a great concept. Again, Year Life and some other partners those have been very successful. 4 different locations now.
Johnson City, Knoxville, Greenville, South Carolina, and Nashville. And we've got a couple of cider houses in Spear County that are part of the Yeehaw Brewing too. So it's been it's a fun business. I have again just proud that we've been able to grow that. And it was really it's outside of Sevier County, but Jessie was she was in medical school in Johnson City, and I was taking the kids, my youngest, to daycare, and I remember seeing these old train stations that were up there, these old depots that were sort of dilapidated. And so it was much like you're doing here at home in Sevier County. I wanted to preserve some really cool historic buildings that were an important part of the community, and Yeehaw was born out of one of those buildings. So to see kids throwing ball and families, it's neat because although we're certainly in the alcohol beverage industry, it is the family piece has always been really, really important. And so we take our kids everywhere. I don't want to go anywhere if I can't take my kids, right? And so creating spaces where people can congregate, experience community. That's probably been the best part of Yeehaw is seeing how that has developed.
And that theme certainly carries into Ober. I'm thrilled to talk about this. Probably the newer venture. I think 2022, you and several Sevier County families decided to take ownership.
Right.
It has a fascinating history.
As I understand it, some local families and families from Knoxville were interested in creating a ski club, and it was more less commercial and more. It sounds like it developed out of desire to pursue a hobby, and the tram was not a part of it at that time. So it was really just a space up in Gatlinburg where people could ski when it snowed, and long before artificial snowmaking. So that was sort of the beginnings, and then the Anders family, who really were. Claude Anders was behind the tram. He came from Johnson City, came down here, and I can't imagine doing that today, 2024, building a tram 2 miles long from the middle of Gatlinburg up to the top.
What are your memories? of
Yeah,
Ober.
I'd see these signs and the Alpine Slide, all of them. I wanted to go do that, but it felt like it was a world away, even though it was here in the same county. And I remember going to eat at Shoney's in Pigeon Forge and getting the brochures and looking at them. And it's just, so it's for me, it was, I knew, even as a young child, I knew that it was an important part of the community. And it was interesting, especially interesting because the business was more popular in the winter when everything else was kind of closed. And so it was, for a long time, it has been a driver of winter tourism in the county. And so I didn't understand the dynamics around that as a kid, obviously, but it sure, I knew it must be a fun place to go.
How did that opportunity arise?
I had been introduced to Kent Anders, and who was at the time one of the sons who was operating the business, and I am endlessly interested in investing in Sevier County. It really was born from a friendship. I met him and we started talking about Gatlinburg. A lot of it was my admiration for the story of how his dad built this tramp, and it just kind of took off from there. And over about a 6-month period, we started talking more about the business, and I was very clear at some point about my interest, and that evolved into a discussion around acquiring the property. Gatlinburg is a very important part of that brand, and the word Gatlinburg still exists in a big way. So it was not to try to take the Gatlinburg out of Ober. It was really more to try to identify the property as something new in some way, and to really own the mountain in a way that we could develop around it. The property prior to us taking over hadn't changed a whole lot in decades. So it was really an effort to try to talk about the future for the mountain, and but to also embrace the really rich history of Ober.
There is a shift to transition from that seasonal business beyond winter sports. Right. Let's talk about what has already been added to Ober Mountain and what the plans are.
Last year, we opened a new downhill mountain bike course, which is we like to mountain bike as a family, so it's a great feature to be able to add. We've got the lifts already in place. So we were able to do a downhill course where people who don't want to go out and get a workout in riding uphill could just take the bike up and ride down. So that's been fun. We've got an incredible zip line experience. It starts from the top of what they always call the scenic lift, or Mount Harrison, and it shoots off into Mount LeConte. It's over 3,000 feet.
Gosh.
It's incredible. We made a significant investment in the snowmaking. I think we had 93 days of skiing this year, which is significant. We were fortunate to pick up a piece of property just adjacent to the tram. So that was in just last fall, and we're working through the potential changes to the tram that would allow us to fully develop that area. But it was amazing just to be able to go in and clean up some of the structures that were adjacent to the property that you could see back in there. And it was, I think that just trying to make things look a little prettier helps. But we've got a long way to go. I really do believe that it'll probably be 3 years before that whole property, the Ober experience, is what we envision and what we want it to be. But we're working hard to get it there.
What is the big goal Ober and the takeaway for families especially?
I think that at some point, I think that there will be an overnight element that exists. I think there will be
beyond the cabins that are currently around, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot on Ski Mountain, but I think that there will be an overnight element in the experience at Ober, and something that is part of the property and the experience. We want to give as much value as we can to the guest, and they're working hard all year to save up to come visit here and spend their money here in our hometown. So I feel like we owe that to them. And so I think over the next 3 years, you'll see more and more improvements up there.
My mind can't help but go back to 2016. I spent a lot of time there covering the wildfires.
Yeah.
That was home for you guys.
Yeah.
Where were you when that was taking place, and what was that like?
Yeah,
watching and waiting, and I mean, it was tragic.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was in Colorado. I got on a plane the next morning and came home, and I remember it was scary. I mean, it was incredibly scary for. I can't imagine what it was like for our friends and family that were here in the middle of it at the time. But I remember coming home the next day and already trying to think about what's recovery look like along the way. I'd gotten to know Zach Brown and had called him and asked if he would come to a concert in Gatlinburg. And that day was so impactful because people went back to work. People came back and were visiting the community. The lives that were lost, and the people who lost homes, and all the devastation is real, and I think impacted the community in such a big way. But the way that everybody came back together, and the investment that's come back in, and the mountains that turn green again. I mean, it's been remarkable to see the recovery too. So, but yeah, those were tough days for sure.
What does Sevier County not have?
I've been lucky to get to go a lot of places and see things that are in other areas, and there's a lot that I think that could be done here. I would imagine Sevier County will keep growing, and people will keep coming to visit, and as long as we remain good hosts. So hopefully there are a lot more good ideas to come our way.
Music City's home right now. Any plans to come back?
Music City is not home. That's where I live right now.
Okay.
We're there, but I would imagine that we'll go back to East Tennessee at some point.
Time will tell.
Back home.
We packed a lot into this episode: history, local flavor, and stops you need to visit. We have more stories and videos on our Hollers and Hills website, and we'd love for you to share your Smoky Mountain memory when you log on. And don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.